The French Revolution, a tale of liberty, equality, and fraternity, is the story of a nation's journey towards freedom, justice, and fraternity. From the overthrow of centuries-old political structures like the monarchy and the feudal system to the execution of King Louis XVI and his queen Marie Antoinette, the French Revolution was a cataclysmic event that shook the world to its core. It was a time of immense change where the will of the people triumphed over the power of the few. The French Revolution helped pave the way for modern democracies by showcasing the importance of equality, liberty, and fraternity despite its violent descent during the Reign of Terror. So come along with us as we journey through this turbulent time in history and discover how the French Revolution forever changed the course of human civilization. As we search for the reasons that sparked the French Revolution, we find ourselves transported to the end of the 18th century, a time when France was grappling with bankruptcy. It had been expensive for France to aid the American Revolution, and King Louis XVI's penchant for opulence didn't help matters. To make matters worse, years of failed crops, droughts, and sickness among cattle had pushed the already strained royal treasury to the brink. The situation had ignited rebellion among peasants and urban dwellers who took to rioting, looting, and striking to express their frustration with a leadership that had burdened them with high taxes without offering any respite. In an attempt to get out of the economic mess, Louis XVI's financial advisor, Charles Alexander de Calonne, suggested a financial reform package that included a universal land tax, which would not exempt the aristocratic class. This reform was met with resistance from the nobility and clergy, setting the stage for the revolution that was to come. In a historic move, King Louis XIV of France called upon representatives from the country's three estates, the clergy, nobility, and middle class, to gather at the Estates General in 1789. The purpose was to gain support for policies aimed at addressing the ongoing economic and social challenges as well as to prevent aristocratic rebellion. As the date for the conference approached, representatives from each region were tasked with compiling lists of grievances which they intended to present to the king. Although times had changed since the last Estates General in 1614, the non-aristocratic middle-class members of the Third Estate, who comprised 98% of the population, were still at a disadvantage when it came to the decision-making. The upper and lower houses of Parliament could outvote them at any time. In the lead-up to the May 5th meeting, the Third Estate began to mobilize support for equal participation and an end to the noble veto, which allowed voting based on noble position rather than individual headcount. The nobles, however, were hesitant to relinquish their privileges under the existing system. Despite a shared desire for fiscal and judicial reform and a more democratic government, the traditional power structure was hard to dismantle. The convening of the Estates General at Versailles was overshadowed by a heated debate over the voting mechanism, which resulted in bitter animosity between the three orders. This dispute threatened to undermine the meeting's primary objective and the king's authority as the one who had called it. When attempts to reach a consensus over the voting procedure failed on June 17th, the Third Estate held a separate meeting where they formally changed their name to the National Assembly. 3 days later, on June 21st, they gathered in an indoor tennis court nearby and took a historic oath. The Tennis Court Oath. Serment du jeu de pain. They vowed not to disband until the constitutional reform was achieved. The National Assembly garnered the support of a majority of the clergy representatives and 47 progressive nobles, which forced Louis XVI to reluctantly merge the three orders on June 27th. This move marked a significant turning point in French history and set the stage for further revolutionary action. As the National Constituent Assembly met in Versailles to work on a new constitution, Parisians grew increasingly anxious about the possibility of a military takeover. The collapse of royal power had been welcomed, but the fear of a coup d'etat loomed large. Then, on July 14th, rioters stormed the Bastille citadel, seeking gunpowder and weapons. This event is often regarded as the spark that ignited the French Revolution and is celebrated as a national holiday in France. The revolutionary fervor quickly spread, and the country was swept up in a wave of mass hysteria. The peasants, who had long suffered under the wealthy and powerful, burned down mansions and sacked tax collectors' offices in a bold show of defiance. This uprising, known as the Great Fear, La Grande Peur, prompted the National Constituent Assembly to abolish feudalism on August 4, 1789. Historian Georges Lefebvre would later describe this document as the death certificate of the old order. The French Revolution had begun, and there was no turning back. In a fervent commitment to democratic ideals inspired by Enlightenment philosophers like Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the National Constituent Assembly adopted the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen in late August. This seminal document encapsulated the Assembly's vision of a new political order built on the principles of freedom of expression, popular sovereignty, and representative government. However, as the Assembly struggled to draft a written constitution, it became clear that the road ahead was paved with difficult questions. Who would have the power to select representatives? Would the clergy swear loyalty to the French government or the Roman Catholic Church? What role would the monarchy play in this new system, especially after his failed attempt to flee the kingdom in June of 1791? After months of heated debates, France's first written constitution was finally adopted on September 3, 1791. The document reflected the more moderate voices in the Assembly, creating a constitutional monarchy where the king had the power to veto and select ministers. But this compromise did not sit well with the influential radicals like Maximilien de Robespierre, Camille Desmoulins, and Georges Danton, who called for a more republican form of governance and the prosecution of Louis XVI. Exciting times lay ahead for France as the nation grappled with the challenges of building a new political order while struggling with the legacy of the old regime. In a dramatic turn of events, the French Revolution took an extremist path that would forever alter the course of human history. With fears of counter-revolutionary coalitions brewing among French exiles, the newly elected Legislative Assembly declared war on Austria and Prussia in April of 1792. But the real shocker came on August 10, 1792, when a group of fanatical Jacobins stormed the royal mansion in Paris and arrested the monarch. This marked a pivotal moment in the internal political crisis, setting the stage for the downfall of the monarchy. The National Convention replaced the Legislative Assembly, declaring the end of the monarchy and the foundation of the French Republic amidst a wave of violence. Parisian insurrectionists unleashed a reign of terror, slaughtering hundreds of alleged counter-revolutionaries. The aftermath of this turmoil led to the execution of King Louis XVI in January of 1793 for high treason and crimes against the state. His wife, Marie Antoinette, met the same fate 9 months later. This period of French history remains a source of fascination for historians and enthusiasts alike. What are your thoughts on this thrilling and tumultuous chapter of human civilization? Share your opinions in the comments below. As the dark days of the Reign of Terror came to an end with Robespierre's assassination, the French people found a renewed sense of hope in a more moderate phase of the revolution known as the Thermidorian reaction. This new phase was marked by a groundbreaking development, the passing of a new constitution on August 22, 1795. For the first time in France's history, a bicameral legislature was established, paving the way for a more democratic and representative government. The National Convention, which was mostly comprised of Girondins who had survived the terror, spearheaded this transformation. The executive power of the government was entrusted to a 5-person directory, nominated by Parliament. Meanwhile, the army was led by a young and brilliant general named Napoleon Bonaparte, who quickly put down protests from royalists and Jacobins who opposed the new administration. The Thermidorian reaction marked a turning point in the French Revolution as the people moved towards a more stable and peaceful future. As the French Revolution entered its final chapter, the government was plagued with financial issues, public discontent, inefficiency, and rampant political corruption. The Directory, which had held power for 4 years, found itself increasingly reliant on the military to retain its rule. By the late 1790s, the generals serving in the field had been delegated much of the government's power, and the Directory was hanging on by a thread. It was in this climate of uncertainty that Napoleon Bonaparte executed a bold move that would change the course of French history forever. On November 9, 1799, he launched a coup d'etat, overthrowing the government and declaring himself the first consul of France. This marked the beginning of the Napoleonic era, a time in which France would rise to dominance over most of continental Europe. The ascension of Napoleon signaled the end of the French Revolution, a period of incredible upheaval and change that had rocked the world. What are your thoughts on this pivotal moment in history? Share your comments below. That's all for today. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for more exciting content like this one.